Today, we're extremely excited to welcome Mr. Ruskin Bond to Bangalore International School. Yes, none other than the renowned children's author, Mr. Ruskin Bond himself. My dad reads me stories every night. A Face in the Dark is one such story that will perhaps stay with me forever. It was this story that introduced me to Ruskin Bond. Many followed thereafter. Last week during Diwali, I told my elder cousins that we have the author Ruskin Bond visiting our school. Their eyes and mouth opened wide with surprise and excitement. When I mentioned the same to my dad, he was so thrilled that he wanted to know if he could be a part of this event too. On one hand, kids my age know Ruskin Bond through his stories. And on the other, grandparents show affection and warmth at the mere mention of his name. Such is the magic of Mr. Ruskin Bond. No matter what the generation, he has left no life untouched.
A classic Anglo-Indian writer in English, Ruskin Bond has written novels, short stories, non-fictional pieces, and essays for children. He is regarded as one of the best children's authors in India. His first novel, A Room on the Roof, was published when he was all of 17 years old. There has been no stopping him since. Though he is famous for children's literature, he has written numerous works in other genres as well, ranging from horror to romance to poetry to non-fiction. He has amassed 500 novels, short stories, and essays under his name. He gave us Rusty, a character created by Ruskin Bond to write about his own past. Rusty, the boy from the hills, the blue umbrella, a flight of pigeons, rain in the mountains, cherry tree, the night train at Dearly, When the Tiger Was King, and the hidden pool are just a few of the names among several of his notable works. Ruskin Bond has received numerous awards and honors for his literary contributions. He was awarded the Sahitya Academy Award in 1992 for Our Trees Still Grow in Dera. He was awarded the Padma Shri in 1999 and the Padma Bhushan in 2014, the highest government recognition given to an Indian citizen for his exemplary work. His writings have also been adapted into many movies and TV serials.
People around the world are fascinated by Ruskin Bond's stories. He has written about tigers, rivers, ghosts, jungles, mountains. Almost all his stories are influenced by his life in the Himalayas, where he spent most of his childhood. His writing style is simple yet effective. His stories are crisp and splendid. His writings are filled with optimism and goodness. Heartwarming characters and vivid description of the beautiful Indian countryside are typical of Ruskin Bond books. Ruskin Bond, born in May 1934, now lives with his family in Missouri. Being a writer for over 50 years, he has played a pivotal role in the development of literature among children in India. Across the world, he is spoken of with as much affection, respect, and adulation as he exudes himself. We, the students and faculty at Bangalore International School, are extremely grateful and honored to have him among us today. Please join me in welcoming the man himself, Mr. Ruskin Bond.
Thank you for saying all those nice things about me. I think you can see me blushing even now. I think you know more about me than I do now. You've been so comprehensive in your introductions. So it's great to be with you, and I'm here to answer any questions you like, be a part of this. You made this special day for me, and I'm really grateful to you. So I'm at your mercy. Please go ahead.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Over the years, readers have been fascinated by your simple style of your writing. We read your books with wonder and delight, learning, exploring, imagining. We wish to now hear from you, your experiences as a writer.
Gosh, well, they go back a long way. I think to the time your mummies and daddies were born, or even before that, because I finished school in 1950. How many years back is that? 80? I forget my own age sometimes. I think I'm 87. So, and I started writing when I was 17, which takes me back 70 years. There was a year I left school. And in those days, it wasn't a popular vocation or profession to become a writer. And in my school, I can't recall any other boy. It was an all-boys school. I can't recall any other boy who wanted to be a writer. Because it wasn't a glamorous profession. If you were successful, you were known by the name you made, by your name, but not by your face or your figure. And so when I came home from school that year, after finishing my senior Cambridge, which was something like, class 11, I think, and my mother said, "Now, Ruskin, what are you going to do with yourself?" And I said, "Mom, I think I'm going to be a writer." And she said, "Don't be silly. Go and join the army immediately." You didn't have many options in those days. You didn't have the range of career options that you have today. You're very fortunate in a way that you have so many options when you finish school. But of course, the competition now is very great too.
Much more, yeah.
And at that time, I think the possibilities were limited, but at the same time, the competition wasn't so great. So it sort of works both ways. Anyway, I set out to be a writer, and of course, I couldn't make a living from it immediately. And my mother packed me off to England. And when I got there, feeling very lonely most of the time, I didn't know anybody in Jersey or in London where I ended up. But I was sitting down at night. I took a job. I went through several jobs, in fact, being a travel agent or working for a travel agent, or working in a public health department and a photographic agency. And at night I would sit down and write. And that's when I wrote my first novel, The Room on the Roof, which was about my last year in India, about my adolescence. So it's interesting because it was a novel about adolescence by an adolescent. And that, I think, is what makes it different. So when it got published, I rushed back to India. I wanted to get home again. And but then, of course, we didn't have many publishers here. So book publication in India was still in its infancy. And I had to write a lot for magazines and newspapers in order to make a living. In fact, one of the papers that I wrote for in those early days was the Deccan Herald, your own Bangalore newspaper. It was edited by a gentleman called Pothen Joseph. And so those were great days. I didn't earn much, but I was independent, I was free, I was doing what I wanted to do. And the great charm about my writing life is that I made a living doing what I enjoy most, which is writing stories, essays, poems, all the things you mentioned. So here I am ready to take your questions. Otherwise, just go rambling on and you'll fall asleep.
So, thank you, sir. That was very inspirational, and it teaches us to go against the odds and to put in the hard work. And I'm sure my friends over here enjoyed every bit of it. But sir, the creative writing assignments, don't they really test our writing skills? In fact, my next question is there any secret formula you could share with us?
Secret formula? No, there is no secret formula. I think the desire to write, I would say, in a way, it has to be a passion with you. If you're going to be a a writer all your life, or you're going to make it your vocation, you have to be passionately interested in writing. As you would. I got this expression from a racing car driver only 2 or 3 months back. He was on television and in Italy, I think, and he'd won his first trophy as a racing car driver. And he was asked, what's the secret of your success? And he said, it's from pursuing my passion. So I think whatever line you take in life, you must be passionate about it if you want to succeed. So I think that's the first secret. Other secrets, well, they're not secret. You have to work hard.
Yes, sir, yes.
You have to be fluent in language, and you must be optimistic. You mustn't give up easily.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. We shall now begin the interactive session with Mr. Bond. We will start with Dhwani of grade 5.
Sir, what were you reading in your elementary years? And for children like us who spend a lot of time on phones and devices, how do you think we could keep up our love for reading?
What was I reading in? My elementary class. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
questioner? Gosh, that's a long time ago. What was I reading? Well, we had to read the school readers that were put before us. But the first book I read by myself was actually Alice in Wonderland. And it was an old copy lying around in the house. It wasn't in school. And my father read it to me, and then I read it myself. It's always, I think, helpful when you're very small, if one of your parents reads to you, because then you also get into the rhythm of it, of reading. So that was my first book, and elementary reading were, well, all those forgettable readers that you have in class. Carry on with another question, if you like.
Thank you, sir. And now we have Avni representing the middle school.
Hi, Mr. Ruskin Bond. Of all the characters from your books, which one is your favorite and why so?
Gosh, now that's a difficult question, because when I'm writing a story, I might have a favorite right then and there, the one I'm writing about. But so when I look back, perhaps, on favorite characters, it would be some of the friends I had, and I put them into my stories. Then there was that eccentric uncle of mine, Uncle Ken. He did some funny things, and I put them into stories too. And there was my grandfather, and I could always, if I wanted to write a funny story, I wrote about my relatives. But I usually made sure they were far away and they couldn't get at me. Otherwise, I'd have been in trouble. So favorite characters came out of real life very often, but I changed them around. And animals too, right? Liked writing about animals. And you mentioned, I think, A Face in the Dark, or somebody else did recently. And that's the story I'll tell you about later, how it came about.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sure many of us in the audience love many of your characters. Path from grade 10 has a question for you, sir. But before that, I have a question as well. How has your understanding of human characters refined over the years?
Yes, well, of course, times change. Life in 2021 is very different from life in 1941, when we did not have television or the internet. So many of the things that we are used to now in our modern life. But people haven't changed, basically. Human beings are still the same. Children are basically still the same. What are the things you like?
Yes.
Good food, games, sports, entertainment, going on a outing or a party. All these things were what we enjoyed and what you enjoy today. So I think our basic interests are the same. And human nature doesn't change much. We love each other, we quarrel with each other, we are good sometimes, we're bad sometimes. But I think that the quality that is most important in our lives, past, present, and future, is the quality of kindness, to be kind to others, because I think that's what lifts us above the animal kingdom, let's say. The ability to be kind, to sympathize, to be sorry for someone, to help someone. So that makes us better humans.
Thank you, sir. Now over to you, Pat.
So much like books, movies too inspire us and have the ability to connect with us on an emotional level. So what's your favorite movie?
Yes, well, going back, I grew up on movies. You see, back in the 1940s, 50s, as I said, we didn't have all the variety of the technology that you have today, or television or the internet. So we went to the movies. Going to the pictures was the, I think, most popular form of entertainment. And I liked musicals, I liked comedies, I liked human drama too, films like Goodbye, Mr. Chips, which was based on a famous novel about school life. I used to like seeing films that were based on classical literature. I mean, the works of Dickens were made into great movies. Great Expectations, Oliver Twist, David Copperfield, A Christmas Carol, all these were made into excellent films, and you can still see them today. I think on your, but you can look them up, thanks to the technology that we have. So you can see old movies, you can see new movies, and I must have seen almost hundreds of movies back when I was a boy. So in the 1950s and 60s, and gradually I came more and more back to books for my pleasure and for my reading. But books, movies, especially those that are adapted and based on great books, were of particular interest to me.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I personally love movies as well. I'm sure I'm going to go back home and search for these movies on.
Yeah, you must look up some of those great classics.
Yeah, sure, sir. Gautam, now you can go ahead with your question.
Good morning, sir. It's an honor to speak with you today. So, having composed such an expansive library of literature with over 500 short stories, novels, and essays, where do you derive your inspiration for these unique and quaint stories woven around the simple lives of hill people?
Yes. Well, that last word you used, people. If you're interested in people, you won't run out of ideas, because people are stories, and stories are about people, and each one of you has a story to tell, more than one, I'm sure. So it's basically interested in people, in the living world, in animals and living creatures, in nature. All these things have helped and inspired me. Also books, other great books and writers, their works are inspiring. So there are many things there which go into, I think, the making of a writer. And each one of you will perhaps have something different, which inspires you and helps you to write better. Because I do know a lot of young people now want to write, may not, possibly not full-time or not as professions, but you have the urge to express yourselves and to create something, to be creative, to use words and sentences, to making a story, a book, a poem, an essay. It's all there. It's all there waiting for you.
All right, thank you, sir.
I now request Kashvi of grade 12 AS to present her question to Mr. Bond.
Sir, having been through the colonial, post-colonial, and post-independence phases of India, how did you choose children as your audience, as opposed to an audience that may share the same experiences as you?
That's an interesting question. You know, when I started writing, when I was 17, 18, I was writing for adults. I was writing for the general reader. I wasn't aiming my stories for children or old people. I was just for anyone who wanted to read them, and basically for myself, because every writer is really writing for himself, for herself. So I wasn't writing specifically for children. But some of my stories were found maybe suitable for young readers or for use in schools, for educational purposes. And then gradually I found more of my work sort of being channeled into the, you might say, into the educational system. And then when I was about 40 years old, middle-aged, I wrote the first story that I wrote specifically for children. It was called Angry River. And it happened this way because at first I'd written it as a short novel for the general reader. And I sent it to a publisher in England, and they said, Mr. Bond, this is too short to be a novel for the adult reader, and it's maybe too long for a children's book. Why not? But it'll make a great children's story. So why don't you edit it a bit, rewrite it a bit, direct it towards a younger audience, and we'll publish it as a children's book. So having a pragmatic nature, as I think I have, I did exactly that. And so I converted what was a story for the general reader into a children's story. It became Angry River, and that was the first children's book to be published abroad. And I followed it up with others, which also got reprinted in India. And some I've done for publishers here. And it's gone on. And here I am still writing, sometimes for children, sometimes for adults, sometimes for myself. Because when you write for yourself, then actually that's probably the most enjoyable form of writing. Because provided you're honest with yourself and truthful, it can be very helpful. It's a form of therapy in a way.
Thank you, sir.
So you have worked as a journalist. How, in your opinion, has journalistic writing changed over the years?
Well, yes, of course, journalistic writing up to the 1960s and rather up to 1980s, I suppose, was basically newspaper journalism. Either you were a reporter or you were an editor, or you put the newspaper together. So it was the print medium. But now, of course, you get television journalism, so you can be a different kind of journalist. So in a way, you're following the current affairs and reporting on it, maybe commenting on it. And it's a different kind of life, a different kind of writing to, say, writing novels or short stories or children's books, which is something you can do at home, as I am now sitting in a comfortable chair with a notebook or a writing pad. Whereas if you're a journalist, you've got to go charging around all over the place, the town you're in or even the countryside. Or if you're a foreign correspondent, you have to travel. So that has its own appeal, but it's a different kind of writing.
Yes, sir, and it is impressive how journalism has evolved and become accessible to a wider readership. Gautam, you may ask a second question.
Sir, it seems like it's been a lifetime since you debuted your first novel, The Room on the Roof. As we celebrate its 64th anniversary of the publication of your first novel, what motivates you to keep writing?
Several things. For one thing, writing is the thing I do best, and I've always done best. Not much good at other things. I'm pretty clumsy in a practical way. So motivation also from a very practical, pragmatic view is that having made a living from my writing all my life, or for most of my adult life, I have to keep earning from it because it's in a way my only source of income. So there is also that motivation to keep going. But basically, I enjoy writing. I enjoy putting words together, making good sentences, telling a story, giving pleasure to a reader, giving pleasure to myself. So that's why I say I'm lucky. I've been able to make a decent living most of my life by doing the thing that I like and enjoy most, which is writing. So when people ask me, do you have any regrets in life, Mr. Bond, I say, no, I'm a writer without regrets, because I've done the thing I wanted to do.
Thank you, sir.
The Room on the Roof is a must read, and I personally feel that doing what you love is the best motivation, and to keep doing it just makes everything better. Kashvi, you can go ahead with your question.
Sir, how do your Anglo-Indian experiences and the changing political, social, and cultural aspects of India affect your writing style?
I don't think it's affected it much. You see, back in the years I went to school, most of our teachers were Anglo-Indians, and of course, English was the language in which we studied, and so one interacted with a lot of English literature. Home life varied a good deal, because while I did grow up to begin with, in an Anglo-Indian home, but after my father's death, and I had a stepfather who was an Indian, so it became a different kind of life, and it became an Indian home. So I've had something of both. And in a way, I've been fortunate in that I've had a sort of double inheritance, had a grounding in, let's say, English literature, but I've grown up in a changing world, in an India that's changed, because I was a boy when independence came, 1947. I was 13 years old, so I remember the Indian flag going up on our school playing field in Simla. And of course, there were a lot of things happened. There was partition of the country. There was some terrible happenings at that time. Mahatma Gandhi got assassinated, and things quite sort of came into a more placid sort of decade. And we had the Nehru years, and then Indira Gandhi, and then again turmoil, and she was assassinated. So was her son later. So there's been a lot of turmoil, you might say, in between periods of progress and maturity. So the country has changed. Our way of life has changed considerably. And while but as I say, in my stories, I often go back to my childhood and my youth, because in my mind, that's something permanent that hasn't changed. The life that we have in our minds can't be changed, even by external factors. But at the same time, I do adapt and try to go with the times, and the writer must also adapt too. And you'll find it as you go older, that you will also be having to adapt with the changing world around you, whatever your profession may be.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Avni, you may proceed with your question.
Sir, when did you first consider yourself as a writer? What advice would you give to young budding writers?
Yeah, I first considered myself as a writer when I was very vain and egotistic, and I was still at school, and I said, I'm a writer, even though I'd only written a funny book about my teachers, which got me into trouble. So if you're going to write a story when you're at school, take my advice, keep your teachers out of it. Write about yourselves, about your friends, but don't put your teachers in your stories, unless you make some very flattering remarks about them, which I failed to do. But my advice to young writers is read. Every great writer has in his or her childhood or boyhood or girlhood been a reader, a great reader, because it's from your love of reading or the love of language, the love of storytelling, that you will want to also do the same and be a writer too. So reading is all important. Read well, write well. That's the rule. You can't go wrong.
Thank you, sir.
I recall that your mantra for budding writers has always been write regularly and be disciplined. And now also we will read more so that we grow as writers ourselves.
That can be your new mantra.
Yes. I have always been meaning to ask this question, and it's an honor to ask someone of your caliber. What is the typical process you use when you write a short story? Do you come up with the character first or the plot? Or is there anything else that is in the works?
Well, you're right. Very interesting question. It's usually the character. I've an interesting character, I then weave a story around him or her. And I will also have written the story first in my head before I put it down on paper. Otherwise, you get writer's block or get stuck halfway through if you go rushed into writing your story or novel, whatever, without planning it beforehand. You might suddenly run out of ideas or events or episodes. So you need your character, you need a plot or a story to weave. It doesn't have to be a strong one, but it has to be. You have to have something to say, and best you write it in your head. I visualize it like a film. In a way, growing up on movies helped me to, in a way, visualize a story before I write it, and then it's a question of putting into words and sentences and making it interesting, giving it a beginning, a middle, and an unforgettable end, if possible. So visualize your story, your essay, whatever you're writing, and then you won't get stuck in the middle.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Parth, you may ask a second question.
Mr. Bond, of all the numerous books and stories you have written, which one are you the most proud of?
Gosh, that's a very difficult one, because, when I'm actually immersed in a story or a novel or whatever I'm writing, then that's the one I'm enjoy the most or like the most. And then maybe looking back later, I might have some favorites. But I think the stories I wrote when I was in my 20s, I'd call it my romantic period, because I was always falling in love somehow and falling out of love, or not receiving any love in return. So I wrote those rather sad romantic stories like Love is a Sad Song and The Night Train at Deoli and The Eyes Are Not Here, in which I meet beautiful girls and lose them within a few hours. So I'm rather an affectionate feeling for that period. So we go through different periods. So there was my boyhood period and of adventure stories, and the romantic period, and then I think now in my in these senior years of mine, you could call it my humorous or funny period, because I'm beginning to find life very funny now, and because as when you get older, you do funny things too. Only yesterday morning, I was searching all over for my reading glasses, and I was getting very irritated and grumpy because I had an important letter and I wanted to read it. And then Shri, Siddharth's sister, said, What's wrong, Dada? Why are you so upset? I said, I can't find my glasses. She said, you're wearing them. I had them on all the time, and I just didn't realize it. So these are the funny things can happen to you as you grow up. Or finding that I was brushing my teeth with the shaving cream instead of the toothpaste. I got all frothy, and even the cat saw me and ran away, probably thought I had hydrophobia. So funny things happen, and record them, write about them. Life's funny. Look at the funny side.
Yeah, and needless to say, for us, your conversational style engages us and draws us into the plot, and we truly enjoy reading your books. And one more question I would like to ask. Was there any idols or experiences that made you choose the style of writing? Was there any specific reason behind it?
Yeah, I think, every outstanding writer has his or her own style, or develops a style of his own. And it's the writers who have a style that always fascinated me or interested me most. So it could range from the passionate style of Emily Bronte or Dickens's colorful way of creating characters, or say even Hemingway's rather, you might say brutal style, or the humorous style of P.G. Wodehouse, So every author, I think, the ones you remember best are the ones who have an individual style of their own. And so so one must try to create one's own style of writing by which you can be recognized. As you say, you perhaps come across something of mine without my name there, but you might recognize it as being something I've written, because I have my own individual way of putting things. So I would also, to those of you who are interested in writing, say, create your own individual style. Be different, in other words. Try to be different from other writers.
Thank you, sir. Sir, could you speak about the lone fox?
The lone fox?
Yes, sir.
Well, when I was looking for a title for my autobiography, and I went back to my early arrival up here in the hills when I gave up living in the crowded, the city life that I'd had for 4 or 5 years. And I came to live in the hills. And one night I was walking home to my cottage in the dark. Well, it wasn't dark, the moon was up. And I saw a fox actually dancing in the moonlight. And I wrote a little poem about it. And I think I think I can remember it. I'll recite it to you. It goes like this. As I walked home last night, I saw a lone fox dancing in the bright moonlight. I stood and watched, knowing the night was his by right. And sometimes when words ring true, I'm like a lone fox dancing in the morning dew. So I liken myself to the fox, enjoying the solitude of the night, and giving me a poem to write.
Yes, thank you.
So I'm a lone fox dancing, but not a wolf. I got very angry in an interview once. A lady on a TV station interviewed me and kept referring to my book as a lone wolf dancing.
Wolf.
So I said, I'm not a wolf, I'm a fox.
What have you learned during your writing career that you wish you had known when you had first started out as a writer?
What have I learned? To be humble, to be patient, to be persevering, and not to give in to disappointment, because, along the way there will be disappointments. There were. I had my failures sometimes. In the early days, I couldn't get a publisher sometimes for some of my early books and writings. Yes. But you have to persevere and have confidence in yourself and in your abilities. So perseverance and not giving up is very important in whatever you do, and whatever you undertake.
And your writing style is known to be easy and conversational. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I try to write as comfortably as I can, and just as though I'm talking to you. So I would. It's a conversational style, you might say, and it means it's easier to read. I don't want people to struggle with difficult words or complicated sentences. It's just conversation. I'm chatting, telling you a story, as I would orally.
Yes, sir.
Question.
Yes. And another question is, for all of us, what would you like to tell us, like a message, just like some inspiration, or what do we do as writers, budding writers, any message for overall message?
Well, yes, as I've been saying, don't give up easily, but also be confident in your ability to write well. Master the language that you're going to write in. If it's English, then be fluent and master it. Or if you want to write in any other language, that too. You must be at ease in it. So you need that fluency there. You must have ideas too, because you need ideas when you're going to write. You must be interested in people, in the life around you. You must be care about things. So all these things come together to help you to be a good writer and a good person too.
Yeah, and during the pandemic and the lockdown, most of us had a lot of free time. Have you personally written any new pieces or any new stories?
Yes, quite a lot. I wrote a little book called It's a Wonderful Life, which was more or less a journal, or kept during this epidemic. I got a bit fed up of it and then changed it around as I went through it. And I've been writing other things. It's been, I know people, especially young people, have had a tough time during this epidemic because you have been able to go out, do the things you enjoy doing. You mean maybe stuck at home all the time. But for the writer to be stuck at home maybe is a good thing. So here I am. I've probably done more writing in the past year than I normally do because I've been at home all the time. Home is the place we usually write. But since I couldn't vary it with other activities, I did write more. I read more. I slept more. And I have to confess, I ate more. Thank you.
And can you read us one of your favorite pieces, any of them?
Oh, I don't know if I've kept one here. What's here? This is a well-known story of mine called The Tunnel. It's just got reprinted as a chapter book for young readers. So it's a boy sitting outside a railway tunnel in the jungle, and his companion is the watchman, the night watchman, who looks after the tunnel. And there's also a leopard in the vicinity, and this leopard gets trapped in the tunnel, and the night watchman manages to actually help it to escape. So in a way, it's a story of wildlife and how we can perhaps live better with wild creatures.
Yes.
So that's the general plot, and it's beautifully illustrated. Very important, especially for children's books, that they be well illustrated.
Illustrated, to keep them interested. And
that's right, and to attract the young reader. It's all right with adult books, to not to have pictures, but as Alice says in Alice in Wonderland, right at the beginning, she says, "What good is a book without pictures?" Of course, she was only a little girl, and naturally it helps to have good illustrations.
Thank you, sir. And as we conclude with this interactive session, on behalf of the BIS students and teachers, I can confidently say that we got many useful tips and more from one of our favorite writers, Mr. Ruskin Bond. This session has been both informative and interesting, and it was a pleasure interacting with you and an honor to have you in our midst. And thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you for all your good questions and for your putting them all together and directing them to me.
Thank you, sir. It was an honor to listen to you, and we learned a lot of life lessons and also writing tips. To conclude, I call upon Anish to give the vote of thanks.
Sir, on behalf of the BIS community, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you today for spending the time this morning to educate and inspire us. It truly was an enriching experience and one from which we all walk away enlightened. Once again, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. You made my day. Thank you all.
It was an honor, sir.
Bangalore International. Best. Good luck to all of you.
Thank you, sir.